Well, welcome to this video, and I hope you like it. If you do, click the like button, hit subscribe, and share with a friend. Okay, this is kind of a follow-up to my response to Viva Freud in a way here. A little talk about a historical figure that's almost become an urban legend, let's say. I'm talking about a real person who was born in 1869, passed away in 1938, named Mary Mallon. A lot of people pronounce it more like Malone, but it's spelled like melon as in melon bank, except for with an A instead of an E in the first syllable. She is better known to history as Typhoid Mary. She had a rather unfortunate life. She was born in Ireland. She came to the United States in the 1880s. Like many people probably have somebody like this in their family tree. She worked as a domestic servant and eventually became more steadily occupied as a cook. She started out, she worked as a maid, a cook, whatever, but she became more focused on being a cook. And one of the families she worked for had this outbreak of typhoid, and that kind of brought things to attention that, you know, they were looking for a source. And at first they thought it might be something that these people ate was contaminated, specifically some freshwater clams. But it turns out that not all the people who got sick ate the clams. So then they looked a little bit harder, and they kind of discovered that Mary had the disease, but she didn't have any symptoms. And she really didn't believe she had the disease. And that's part of what caused a lot of problems. Also, the fact that she was Irish and Catholic. You might get away with being one. It was kind of hard to get away with being both at the time. It's not like that anymore, but even a lot more recently in history, when JFK was elected president, they made a huge deal out of him being Irish and Catholic. In fact, I think he was the first Catholic president, period. A lot of people did not like Catholics at the time, and the Irish especially. She probably would have been treated better if she was, say, French Catholic, or if she was Irish Protestant. And of course, it probably would have been a whole different story if she was a, you know, Protestant of Anglo-Saxon descent, whether she was born here or immigrated from England or Canada or some other British colony. She probably would have been treated a little bit different, but the ethics of her treatment isn't what I really wanted to get into. She was widely studied and publicized and notorious, even after they discovered other people who were quote-unquote carriers, non-symptomatic people that carried the disease. And she was quarantined for a while, and then they released her, making a deal that she could go about her business, but she could never work as a cook again. And she didn't know how to do anything else, and to be honest, she probably didn't really believe it. I mean, germ theory was not that well accepted back then. I mean, in the 19-teens, they were still passing ordinances to ban common cups, including in places like doctor offices. So if you're not unfamiliar with a common cup, that's basically you had either a pitcher of water, or maybe if you went with running water, you'd have like a faucet basically. You'd have a cup there for everybody to use. You wanted a drink, you used the cup, you put the cup back. Next person wanted a drink, they used the same cup. So the idea of germs and things being contagious was actually quite new. And you know, being somebody who grew up poor in Ireland, she probably knew a lot more about Catholicism than she did about science. And being that she was a grown-ass woman when this stuff happened, it was probably really hard to change her mind about anything at that point in time. There's some criticism that, you know, they didn't explain things to her well, but I'm not sure they really had a good starting point for that explanation. Your average 4 or 5 year old kid watching cartoons probably has a much more scientific understanding of germs and disease just from things they watch on TV than she probably would have. You know, she probably would have grown up thinking that, you know, getting sick was, you know, bad air or, you know, God's punishment for something or whatever. She probably had a lot of these more, as we think of them today, like superstitious ideas about disease, but, you know, uneducated, and, you know, these were different times where, you know, the population as a whole, you know, we lagged behind Europe here in America by a couple of decades on really accepting things like water treatment and things like that. So you got to understand the times a little bit there. You know, we look back and we're kind of horrified. And that's part of the reason why, you know, hand washing is a big deal when you work in food service and things like that. And even with hand washing, you know, diseases spread. You know, you always see these little factoids about there's fecal matter on people's phones and on TV remotes and everything else. And there's little bits and pieces of germs floating around everywhere. It's just everywhere around us. That's part of the reason why sanitizers don't make any sense. I mean, you can sterilize an object, but as soon as the air hits it, it's not sterilized anymore. But that's kind of a side topic. At any rate, she used a fake name. She ended up getting another job as a cook, got more people sick, and then they basically put her away on an island and kept her away from people until she eventually passed away in a hospital in 1938. By 1938, they had a vaccine for typhoid fever, and you know, it can be argued that this was excessive and they should have done things differently. But the point is, you know, there are people who, you know, they can catch a disease, show absolutely no symptoms, pass on that disease to other people, and often large numbers of people, and it can have bad consequences for those people. You know, typhoid's a little different than an airborne disease like COVID or the flu or even the common cold. So it's a little bit less contagious. It's got to be in food or drink or something like that, or, you know, some other close human contact to spread it. And it affects the digestive tract, not the lungs, so a whole different method of transmission, but still, she's credited with getting around 120 people sick at least, and the number might be far greater than that, and out of the people she is believed to have gotten sick, 5 of them died. So basically, through her lack of believing this or continuing to spread this disease, you know, she killed 5 people. You know, I'm sure she didn't intend to. She probably didn't really believe it herself. From what you read, you kind of get that out of it. She really She's like, I'm not sick. How can I be making these other people sick? And like I said, you know, her level of education plus just the level of widespread knowledge throughout the culture. It's like scientists knew about germs a lot earlier than the rest of the public kind of bought into the idea. And, you know, these fights were happening in the early 1900s about, you know, germ theory at all in some cases. So you've got to have that in perspective. But it is just a case that shows you how you've got to be careful, and how people who don't feel sick, don't think they are sick, can infect a lot of other people and possibly kill a lot of people through their negligence. You know, it's a real thing, and it's kind of weird. Just among the people I know of some people who have had, you know, elderly relatives get sick, and, you know, they weather it fairly easily. Then, you know, yeah, it sounds more convoluted than it is, but my Navy buddy's girlfriend's sister's boyfriend had like most of his family wiped out. He died, and like 3 or 4 other people died. Like 5 people got the COVID, and one of them didn't have any symptoms, and the rest of them died in like a week and a half. So you've got very different extremes, and, you know, like I said, some people shrug it off. Some people, it takes them out in a heartbeat. A lot of people, most people are somewhere in between, and there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason to it, because, you know, these people that died, most of them are around my age. So, you know, people in their 40s and 50s are getting taken out like that, and there's older people who are, you know, not really hit as hard, where we kind of hear in the news, well, it tends to hit people who are older or have pre-existing conditions, and sometimes it seems to take out healthy people almost instantaneously. Sometimes people who, you know, they're in their 80s and they smoke a pack a day, and you know, they get sick for a week, and they go on with their life just like they had a bad cold or the flu or something. There's not really a rhyme or a reason to it that we can really identify right now. And there may be some people are just genetically predisposed to have a severe case and possibly die, and some people are genetically predisposed to just shrug it off without any symptoms. Don't know. You know, looking back 10 years from now, maybe we will know. Right now, we're figuring it out as we go along to some extent. But just wanted to kind of bring up this historic person. I know people have heard the name Typhoid Mary before. Few people know that it was a real person, and you know, some of the history behind it. I'll include a link below that has a little bit more information on her story. But like I said, you don't want to be that person that has it, that goes and gets everybody else sick. You know, and there's a lot of that going on out there right now. Be safe. Well, I hope you found that video informative. Hopefully it made you think, and please click the like button and subscribe if you haven't done that already, and check out the video that should be appearing somewhere around me here, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks.